And we have made it. The NFL regular season kicks off tonight. Bills at Rams. We've got the Jets taking on the Ravens in just a few days. Welcome into a new episode of Chasing 69, episode 25, quarter of the way to 100.
That's huge. First milestone
For the boys.
Let's
Exactly.
go. And the first, I was just thinking this is our first ever pod before a real game.
The first
like
meaningful
preview pod.
Yeah, I don't want to say meaningful podcast, but we've been talking all season about how it was such an odd time to start doing a show. Unfortunately, the Jets, thank God the Jets had a meaningful offseason with a lot of draft picks and a lot of free agent signings. I can only imagine
the offseason was a blast.
I can only imagine what like a dead, boring offseason would be like, and maybe we'll have that a few months from now, but that is not where we're at now. It is September 8th, Thursday. The NFL season is back. Before we get into everything today, we're going to be obviously wrapping up our thoughts on the Jets season, giving out some predictions. We're going to go into the upcoming game against the Ravens as well, too. But before we get into all of that, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69. Same for the YouTube page. Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Blake Andrew Pace. Make sure to follow all of my work with Sports Illustrated Jets Nation there as well, too. Teddy, how are you doing? Are you excited? It feels like Christmas Eve, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm amped up. Once everyone's listening to this, we'll have football that day, Thursday, which is awesome.
The best.
I'm in school still, so I've been trying to get all my homework done this week so I can just watch the Jets, not even think about it, watch all the football games. Tomorrow I'm obviously going to be focused on the Bills Rams, get some daily fantasy action going. We are fully back. It is real. These games actually count. I'm amped up.
2 plays for you right now. Take Allen Robinson over on receiving yards. The other one's a Sunday play, but I took Brandon Ayuk over on receiving yards too. So those are my 2 bets, 2 player props I've placed so far today. Not important to the show at all, but
just for this week, we're saying?
Just for this week, those are the 2 props on just game ones that I've already taken. I feel like the 2 of us have discussed our other bets, but this is a Jets show, and Teddy, the Jets tried to play a little trickery on the Ravens the last 48 hours by the time this podcast comes out. Monday, they're hinting, hey, Zach Wilson's at practice. If he's going to give it a go on Tuesday or my days are all messed up because recording this on a Wednesday. It was Tuesday.
Because Labor Day.
It was Tuesday where it was like, hey, Zach Wilson's practicing. If he's out there on Wednesday, they might give him a go if he's at 100% for the season opener. And if not, he will sit out the first week. Move forward 24 hours, and not only is he not available for the Ravens game, Robert Saleh was like, look, it's probably going to be week 4 when they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that means Joe Flacco will get the start against his former team, and we'll preview that game a little bit later on. This is more just our housekeeping area. Teddy, thoughts on the emotional roller coaster that you, the fan, went through, thinking that your quarterback might be there and then he's no longer available?
No, it was a roller coaster for sure. I was thinking about it, and it's really funny because 3 days ago, before Robert Saleh went on the Michael Kay show and said Zach Wilson might play, if they had come out and been like, listen, Zach's going to be out first 3 weeks, we're hoping he gets back week 4, I would have been like, all right, that's not ideal. I would have hoped for 1 or 2 games missed, but totally expected. Like, we knew he was hurt. We knew he was going to miss some time, whatever. All the fucking trickery and shenanigans that went on this week just to say, like, oh, he's actually not going to play, was just so wild to me. Like you texted me right when the news, like Sal's interview came out or whatever on the Michael Kay show. And then I was like, oh, really? Like, I didn't realize he would be ready at all. And, started to get my hopes up, even if not for this week, at least for week 2 against the Browns. And then, it's just classic coach speak, classic, just like you said, trying to get an edge, which who really cares? But I don't think it really worked very well against the Ravens. But yeah, definitely an emotional roller coaster. Definitely got me. To all the people who just like went straight to Twitter and were like, why would you expect anything different? Like literally, fuck you. Like go fuck yourself. Because I expected things different because that's what everyone's been talking about the past couple of days. So my bad. I was just getting pissed. I was like, these fucking douchebags. But nah, all love, all love.
it it it
But yeah,
didn't work.
it was wild.
It didn't work for the Ravens, and it wouldn't work anyways. And I don't want to say that there's like that both of them suck in terms of Wilson and Flacco, but it's not like, last season when Aaron Rodgers and then you had to go to Jordan Love. It's like at the end of the day, for the most part, you're getting the same looks on offense, and it's not like
Right.
Zach Wilson is miles and miles better than Joe Flacco. That's not to say that Flacco is one of the, is great. It's not to say that Zach Wilson is bad. It's just they're a little bit closer between, where it's not like you're going to be tricking the Ravens all that much. And it seemed like they had been planning the entire time to take on Flacco just based on press conferences. So yeah, Zach Wilson is really the big thing to focus on for this portion of it, not being available for the first 4 weeks. So that takes away the game against the Ravens, the Browns, and the Bengals there, with the hope that he is back in week 4 against the Steelers to close out that AFC North schedule. Like we'll go into our thoughts on the season, and then these first 4 weeks are, good teams. So it's going to be a battle of the backup quarterbacks week 2, Jacoby Brissett versus Joe Flacco. That'll be a real doozy to watch. And then, obviously that Cincinnati game last year was such an exciting one for the Jets as well too, where, we're going to be with Joe in that one as well too. Anything else with the Zach Wilson injury itself in terms of season-long stuff? We don't need to go into. We've talked about how this is an important season for Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a few games he's going to be missing now that don't give him a full 17-game slate. So I just curious your thoughts on his on the impact it has toward his season.
Yeah. I mean, it's not ideal. You want this guy out there. And he's just kind of starting behind the 8 ball now, missing the first 3 games. It's like, okay, if he's even able to get out there week 4, is he going to be able to kind of just jump right in, or is there going to be kind of that growing pains, get back used to it, have a new quarterback out there. So that's unfortunate. And it's also just, you think about this has got to be like 4 or 5 years now in a row where, our starting quarterback, who we're hoping is going to be the answer and we're hoping to evaluate and we're hoping to take that step, is missing, 3 or more games at least. And it's just, it's frustrating. You don't want, I want to see Zach Wilson out there every week, and I want to see what he can do. And I don't want to have, okay, well, we just have to wait because he's injured, and I don't want, who knows, maybe he'll get injured again and miss some more games. And it's frustrating because you want to see him out there for 17 games this year. That was like a big hope. And now, at the most, it's probably going to be 14. So that just kind of sucks. But for overall, like the Jets, I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think it's going to change the trajectory of like their season or their future. It's just a little annoying.
It's a good point that you make, because last year was so inconsistent throughout the entire roster that it's like, okay, they have made upgrades to the offensive line. They have tight ends that are trustworthy. They're getting back Carl Lawson. They're going to be more sound in the secondary. Like, this is the year to be consistent as far as starters go, and just good play, sound play, being competitive and staying within games. And it's like, okay, well, now we're missing the quarterback to start off. So that's a really good point there. I don't think it's going to change too much of the offense. I think comparatively, there are a lot of things that Zach Wilson can do throwing wise that Flacco can't. But I also think Flacco is probably going to keep himself a little bit more tempered and poised in these early weeks, because they are tough defenses. Baltimore is going to be really tough up front. Pittsburgh, well, I guess Pittsburgh is also going to be with Wilson, but Cleveland's got a decent front 7. Cincinnati loves to blitz a lot defensively as well too. Yeah. So it's going to be ones where the offense isn't going to be necessarily, in my eyes, explosive. I think it's just going to be, can we stay competitive and stay within these games, and hopefully our defense does enough where our offense doesn't have to put up 30 points a game in this opening month of the season. I feel like that really sums it up about Zach. You just hope that he's ready to go week 4. Kind of some other stuff we want to get into, and we'll probably do this weekly just because the injury reports will start coming out by the time that we record these podcasts. We've got, an injury report here, and there's a few that are kind of more noticeable than others. Teddy, I want to loop these 2 that we've got here on the rundown almost together a little bit. Um, Today's injury report, or I guess yesterday's by the time that you're hearing this. So Wednesday's injury report, two do not practice. Zach Wilson, obviously. The other being Dwayne Brown, the 37-year-old left tackle, dealing with a shoulder issue. Not really what you would want to have heading into his first week as a Jet, especially not getting a ton of reps in preseason, joining the team late after the Mekhi Becton injury. I saw a stat earlier from Rich, and the offensive line as a starting five got 21 preseason reps. And obviously there's a lot more that you'll get in practice and whatnot, but the five in terms of playing against other defenses got 21 snaps as a starting five. So Brown not being out there certainly doesn't help. And on the right side as well, too, George Fant dealing with a little bit of a knee issue. He was limited. Teddy, the other, I guess we'll stop right there. Thoughts on the injuries with the offensive line before we go to some of the other players?
Yeah, I think like Dwayne Brown's the big shock there, just because I hadn't heard about him like dealing with this injury beforehand. And I haven't really like seen a ton of details around it. I don't know if maybe you have about like the actual injury.
No,
not particularly, right? I do kind of think, obviously, you know, it's week one. We just signed this guy within whatever the time frame was, the past couple of weeks. So you want him out there, you want him practicing, you want him to get used to it. But I mean, this is like a 37-year-old NFL player on a Wednesday practice. Like I would almost guarantee Dwayne Brown's not going to practice a Wednesday the entire season. You know, like that's just when veterans take days off when they don't need practice. So I just like don't really know how to react, because if it's Dwayne Brown's hurt and might not play, you know, that worries me, because I don't like our tackle depth. We already have had so many moving pieces. George Fant is being limited, things like that. But if he's just like taking a veteran day because we want to make sure he's going to be healthy for week one, you know, I think that's also a very real possibility.
There are some teams that will just put rest next to a guy instead of an injury. Maybe the Jets just aren't doing that. Maybe he's just got a little bit of a sore shoulder. But you're right. It could just be we've got a 37-year-old left tackle, and we don't want him. We want him ready for every
which
game.
Seems odd week one. Like I definitely will. I'm not gonna like act like you know what I mean. But maybe he's slightly injured, but it's one of those things where it's like if he's gonna he's going to play or not going to play, he's going to play. Just today, it's better to keep him out, you know, something like that. So it's just hard without more information. But you definitely don't love to see it. I mean, this line, you already kind of touched on it. And we'll talk about it more, but this Ravens D line is going to be something to deal with. So yeah, we really need our line to step up.
And then even with that, beyond those two tackles, Connor McDermott also limited in practice on Wednesday with an ankle injury. So Thursday's injury report, if you're listening to this in the afternoon, it's already come out. You'll know more than we do. But that's Thursday's going to be a big one to keep an eye on, because I usually think teams tend to give the vet rest days on Friday. So interesting to see on the Thursday injury report how that turns out. The other injury of note on here, and of course, there's another one, Justin Hardy, dealing with a calf injury. We don't really need to touch on him too much. The other big one is DJ Reed, dealing with some leg injuries. Now, the Jets listed it as a knee injury, but it's also been reported he's been dealing with some hamstring stuff throughout the preseason. So just thoughts, another cornerback out there, a guy that, you know, we're pretty excited about, opposite Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
You seem to have seen more about the hamstring stuff than I have. So what are your thoughts on
I mean,
one?
I know he's kind of like, the reason he hasn't been practicing, what I've been aware of, is the hamstring, like soft tissue type injury. That's kind of how people have been referring to it. And now, you know, they're putting him on as a knee injury. So I hope it's not a new injury, you know, because DJ Reed, he's missed most of the preseason, just trying to recover, trying to get healthy for week one. If he has something new, that would be a problem. But what I will say about these four limited guys, so that's George Fant, Justin Hardy, Connor McDermott, DJ Reed, like you do at least, I mean, it's a limited practice as opposed to no practice, you know, like that is big. So I would assume that DJ Reed doesn't have a new injury because he still did practice. And all the reports have been that he is trending to play. So we'll just see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, definitely, especially, we all like Bryce Hall, but after what we saw, the confidence isn't super high with him. And we paid DJ Reed all that money. I want to see him out there.
Definitely. Yeah. He's one of those things, like you said, we talk about consistency, that secondary and the upgrades made with Gardner, with Reed, and then also Jordan Whitehead. It's probably one of the most improved position areas of this team over the last season, over this past offseason. Teddy, to stay on the defense with one more housekeeping note, restructured CJ Mosley's contract earlier this week, converting almost about 15 million of his base salary into a signing bonus, which opened up 12 million in cap space this year. It also seems with the money deferred into years beyond that he's going to be sticking around for 2023. That was something that I think we both talked a little bit this offseason is, don't be surprised if they move on from him. But it seems with this contract change now, he'll be around for one more year. Obviously, we don't know what he's going to look like over the next 17 weeks. We want him to be a very strong part of this defense. It clears up space for this year, which I never understand doing. I don't get the NFL salary stuff confuses my brain enough, but then converting all that money where it opens up stuff for this year, is that just to create room in case you need to keep adding guys? Like, what does all that kind of turn into in your head?
Yeah. Well, the Jets were one of the teams who, after, final roster cuts, were a little bit over the cap. I think they were like 2.6 million over. So they did have to clear some room. It's weird terminology because it gets converted into a signing bonus, which makes it sound like he gets all the money now, but that money then gets spread across the remainder of the contract. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people speculated that the Jets were going to try to make a move with this. Joe Douglas probably just likes the flexibility mixed with the fact they had to find some money somewhere. It is interesting to see him being tied to next year, almost guaranteeing that he's going to at least be on the team. We kind of sometimes portray ourselves as being pretty down on CJ Mosley. It's not like I think he's a bad player by any means. No. It's just he is getting older. We just have to kind of be worried about that end of the career dip, I guess. But we'll see what happens. I don't hate, tying him to the team next year. He's a great leader. He's a captain. So yeah, but definitely interesting. Definitely kind of like, I never knew that signing bonus thing. It kind of helps me understand all these salary cap gymnastics that they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Joe Douglas just wants, if he needs to make a move at some point, maybe he wants that flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, like already dealing with injuries, maybe trades are out there, players become available. You never know what you need to do. A week ago, the Eagles trade for a pretty talented safety in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, bring him over and added their secondary just because apparently he became available. He was expendable by the Saints, and the Saints were in their own cap problems. So you're right. You never know what move could potentially be on the horizon. Teddy, that was all I had for housekeeping stuff. I kind of want to take us into kind of just wrapping up our thoughts on this upcoming season for the New York Jets. And if it's all right with you, I think I'm going to take this one over first because I feel like my tone has changed in itself the last few weeks. If you've listened to our AFC East preview, where we did give out predictions and we talked about the Jets a little bit, I think we focus more on the other teams more than the Jets, just because we talk about the Jets every other week. But I think that the Jets, and it's funny because I'm seeing guys put out their season predictions, and I see, how do you say his last name? Rich? How do you pronounce his last name? Is it Samini? Okay.
Samini.
So Samini put out there the other day, he went under the 5.5 win total, gets flamed on Twitter.
What a scumbag.
There's a lot of people putting out their predictions now, and a lot of people are a little bit lower than I think where the fan base is, and that's causing a big stir out of the fan base. To me, the Jets are a much improved team than they were last year. To me, what that means is they will be more competitive in more games. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily believe that it's going to translate to this huge growth in wins that I think a lot of people are projecting. And not to say that people are having them in the playoffs. I think people have them close to the playoffs. And I wrote this down earlier. I think the expectation is that they are closer to the playoffs than they are to the number one pick by the end of the season. I think that is at the very least, you would want the Jets to be in that range where they are further away from the number one pick, closer to the playoffs. there is a lot that is concerning for the Jets. I think they have no doubt added a ton of additions to the secondary that has helped them out. Some really nice value pieces on the defensive line. The offensive line, despite it being shuffled around, is better than it was last year. 4 of the 5 new starters are either new to the team or playing a new position than they did last year, but it is still better than the 5 that they put out a year ago. Running back, upgrade. Wide receivers, more deep. Tight end is so much better. But Zach Wilson not getting a full preseason and a full season to gel with this new team. The run game still offering me a little bit of concern. Jeff Ulbrich, defensive coordinator, is already starting to get rumblings of some concern over his tenure with the Jets and how long he might make it into the season. And then plain and simple, the first 12 weeks of the schedule, I am closer to believing that 6-11 is a very realistic finish for the New York Jets. And it's not necessarily because of them. It's just what's on the schedule. Who do you have to play? Here are some of the opponents and how I have them. I went through and I picked every single game of every team for the full season, and it gave me how I have each team finishing. And here's how I have the Jets opponents finishing this upcoming season. Baltimore Ravens, I have them as one of the most slept on teams in the AFC, 13-4, making the playoffs a top 3 seed. Bengals 10-7, Steelers 10-7, Dolphins twice, I have them finishing 10-7. Packers, I have finishing 14-3. Broncos 10-7, making the playoffs. Bills play them twice a year, 14-3, making the playoffs. And the Vikings also 10-7, making the playoffs. 8 games against projected playoff teams. And at the end of the day, I think the Jets will be in a lot of those games. I think they're going to be very competitive against the Bengals, against the Steelers, against the Dolphins, probably the Packers, and I would assume the Vikings as well, too. I don't expect those to be blowouts like some Jets games ended up being blowouts last year. I think those games are going to be much closer, and you're going to get, a lot of one possession losses or just barely, weren't able to hang on at the end of games. When it comes down to what team do I trust more to get the wins, there's just too many talented teams on the schedule. And despite being a much improved roster, it's going to feel a lot like last season, where it's going to be a very rough start and then rattling off some wins at the end to hopefully bring hope for the next offseason. That's my rant. Thoughts on that? What are your opinions before going into kind of your predictions for the season?
No, yeah. I mean, and just to kind of put a bow on what you said, like, so 7-10, 6-11, that's kind of like where you land.
7-10 would almost
exceed your expectations.
7-10 would exceed my expectations. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, every point you make there is like super valid and super on point. And like, there's not really much you can say otherwise, simply just because, I mean, the things you said with, question, we still don't know what the quarterback play of this team is going to be, and you don't have the guy that you drafted second overall out there. You have a guy who, while we like Flacco as a backup, I mean, you don't know how this line's going to mesh. The defense was historically bad last year. So I totally agree. And I get all the things you're saying. Obviously, I'm the optimist here. I'm a Jets fan. And I also just think there always is more nuance to it than just those things that you lay out, obviously.
Well, and here's the thing, like you said, there were games last year that the Jets won that they shouldn't have won.
Right.
The Bengals game, you guys beat the Titans, right?
Bengals, Titans.
There are those games that will probably be thrown in there. I'm listing all the teams that I think just on paper, if I just had to say who's going to win, I'm going to take those teams. There are going to be games in here, maybe they beat the Vikings, maybe they blow away the Steelers, maybe they split with the Dolphins, or maybe even sweep the Dolphins,
right? And then on the other hand, maybe they lose to the Bears, maybe they lose to the you know what I'm Lions. Saying, there's all these things, but what it comes down for me, and we've talked about this a lot, and it was what made last year different, was the fact that the Jets actually, compared to other years where we had guys we're hoping, the Jets actually have better playmakers this year than they ever have before. Mm-hmm. And I think that, football with, the fandom and the analysis, I've talked about this before, but you can get so caught up in the game and the pieces and all these things. And you need guys who are going to make plays, and if we go out there and somehow Breece Hall breaks off 2 50-yard runs and Elijah Moore has a touchdown and Zach Wilson puts together a few good drives, like all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe we weren't the better team, but we made more plays and we're getting ourselves wins. So for me, I guess I want to talk more about just like expectations and like how they can overcome kind of the prediction that you have for them. But because for me, it really comes down to like, once I watch them week 1, week 2, that's where we're going to start really, obviously once you watch them, you're going to, but that's where you're going to really be like, okay, this is what this team is. Like right now it's all projections, conjecture. This is like, once we start seeing them play, we'll know. And for me, I think it comes down to the Jets have all these young players. We have Elijah Moore. We have Garrett Wilson. Corey Davis is a good player. Zach Wilson, Sauce Gardner. The list goes on of like these players that you can have high expectations for. We need a few of those guys, not all of them by any means, but we need a few of those guys if the Jets actually want to take a step forward to become stars, like not just, oh, this guy's a good player, not like what Quinnen Williams has done, which is, he's been pretty good, but he hasn't been great. He hasn't been game changing yet. And for me, the only way that this is going to be a different Jets team than anything we've seen before is some of these guys, 2 or 3 or 4 of them, really like Sauce Gardner is one of the best corners in the league off the bat. And Breece Hall is awesome. And like things like that. So I think I think like kind of the way you laid it out makes the most sense. I think there are definitely avenues for this team to exceed expectations where there weren't in years past, where 2 years ago you would have said, sure, we want these guys to be good, but what can we really expect to get done with Sam Darnold and Robbie Anderson? You know what I mean? That's just like the beginning of my rant, I guess. I'll take a little breather and let you respond, but it's not even like predictions that I'm saying. It's just like you need something to be different than what's ever happened before in order for all these things that everyone thinks about the Jets to change.
Right. Well, and that's where the Joe Douglas part of this comes into play is I saw earlier today too, where it's like, I can't tell if it was 13 or it was around 10 to 13 starters are projected to be first or second year players. And a lot of them on offense, running back, wide receiver is going to have probably 2 of them, quarterback, still in your second year, right guard, and some on the defense as well too, corner, all those different positions. So that's where you're right. If Joe Douglas, and we believe that he knows how to draft and we believe that he's done well in free agency, all of these pieces should elevate themselves. And maybe it's not, is Zach Wilson a franchise quarterback and is Robert Saleh a top 12 head coach in football? Maybe it's just, what can the team do to elevate each other? Can the position groups mesh together? Can Elijah Moore take a step to where he's now a top 10 receiver in football? There are so many different pieces. Like you said, this team does have a ton of upside. It's just to me, when I come down to it and where I come with these projections is when we are making these and where it's the start of the season, I just would rather trust what I know. And I know that for the last decade, the Ravens and the Steelers have been one of the most consistent franchises. Go back to the beginning of the century. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. Jim Harbaugh and the Ravens, they have won Super Bowls. They have been consistent. And the Packers have been consistent. I guess really outside of that, it's really just strong teams over the last few years. But comparing to what the Jets are, they're in that stage where they're trying to ascend, and the schedule has a lot of teams that have already ascended. So that's where you're right. There is a ton of upside with this team. And it does come into the guys that Joe Douglas has brought in. How do they all start to work together and elevate themselves onto the field?
Definitely. And so to just get into like my real predictions, I guess, I think that this team, I still think this year is a stepping stone year. While I still have hopes, I'm not super down on them. I think they can kind of show up this year and take a big step forward. I think the answer is somewhere between 7 and 9 wins. I think, 7 and 10, 8 and 9. I'm going to land on 8 and 9. That's just kind of like my best case, not really scenario.
It's a great case.
And I think about last year, like the Jets' ability, even though a lot of times it was too little too late, their ability to kind of create one possession games, even sometimes late, I was very impressed with, and I think is like a testament to the coaching. I mean, even week 1, when we played the Panthers, we were down 2 or 3 possessions, and I think we got it to like within 9, or like somehow we had a chance at the end of the game. Even though it wasn't a real chance, it's still, there was some way that we could have made it, and they did that throughout the season. So I think there's going to be a lot of one possession games. I think they're going to be able to win some of those. And you can
sorry. Well, I was just going to say, and even continuing off of that in the preseason, we've seen these, and preseason is so flippy floppy, but it's been one of those ones where it's like this team just stays in games somehow, or finds a way to get back into these games.
And while we've still both expressed concern about the defense, I think the overhaul of this defense is going to be very noticeable. I mean, last year with just injuries and just a lack of talent, the defense this year is much different. If Carl Lawson can stay healthy on that line, add Jermaine Johnson, all these pieces on the defensive line, then you also look at an improved linebacker core. You look at a much improved secondary, which if things go right, could be one of the best in the league. Even the Jets stepping up to like the 20th best defense as opposed to the 32nd could, drastically change this team. And it also drastically changes the amount of pressure that will be on this offense. It's difficult when you go out there and get a 3 and out, and then the other team goes and scores a touchdown quick. And then you go out there and get another 3 out, or maybe throw an interception, and then they score a touchdown. Like a good defense kind of helps the offense and vice versa. So with an improved defense, with an offense that I think is going to run a little bit more efficiently, people more ingrained in the system, I am still confident they're going to be able to make some type of step and get wins that they wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. So that's why I'm landing on 8 and 9. I think they're going to be able to make a decent step, but still kind of be hovering around the playoffs. And then I think, if things go right, next year is really going to be their year to be a playoff contender.
Yeah, this is what we've talked. I don't think there was ever a point where leading up to the regular season, we were like, the Jets are a bona fide playoff team. This is the year where it's like, we are going to learn if we've got the quarterback, and if we don't, we're going to find the quarterback and have a really good team around him by the time that quarterback is in. And I think that's just where this team stands. I think no matter whether or not, if Zach Wilson this year does ascend into that, this team is going to exceed my expectations, and probably a lot of people's expectations. And if he's not, this will still be a competitive roster that stays within games. And then they will go find themselves an answer under center, and be a good team. Because I do think they, for as poorly as last season finished, there were a lot of those games where you're like, man, they're still staying in these. You think about the Buccaneers game and coming back into some of those ones where you're just like, they've got something here, and they've got good players. And then this offseason was a ton of additions. Teddy, I see on here you want to call some shots as well too.
Yeah, I just wanted to get these out there before the season started. Just a couple predictions, couple projections that I want on the record. I think Elijah Moore is getting over 1,000 receiving yards easy this year. What's his over under at? 850. Go shred that.
I saw 850. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whatever we got it at when we did our predictions episode a while back. I think Breece Hall, rookie running backs, running for over 1,000 yards this year. Both for my fantasy teams and for just, I do believe in the talent there. Even if the thing with Breece Hall is I just think his talent really is going to win out, and like his ability with just being able to catch the ball the way he does, he's going to be on the field. He's going to be getting touches. I also want to just say this again. I've said it a bunch. Elijah Vera Tucker will be a Pro Bowl guard this year. And then last, this one's not really a prediction, but could Sauce be defensive rookie of the year? What do you think?
I didn't share this with you, but my most recent article on Sports Illustrated was just, here's some bets to throw out. And it's funny because we agree on 2 of them here. I took the over on Elijah Moore yards. It was over 850. I took the over on that. I did disagree. I took the under on Breece Hall yards, which is at 830, just because I do think it's going to be pretty split in there with Michael Carter. And then I put a long shot to finish it off, and it was Sauce Gardner, defensive rookie of the year. And my reasoning behind that was I felt like there are 4 names listed ahead of him, or maybe it was 5. No, it was 4. And it was the 3 edge rushers. It was Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, and Trayvon Walker. And those 3 all on defensive lines that I don't think are going to be too great. And really at the end of the day, what it comes down to is sack production in terms of, edge rushers getting defensive rookie of the year. So those 3 guys, I was like, I don't know if they're going to be able to be impact edge rushers enough. I don't think they've got enough help on their defensive lines to really help, elevate their numbers. It's not like it's a Myles Garrett type class at edge rusher where there's just this unanimous freak show that's going to be, double-digit sacks in his rookie season. The other guy was Kyle Hamilton, which to be a safety to win rookie of the year, I mean, I think Kyle Hamilton is special. He's special, but would be shocking. So then, yeah, I was like, hey, throw it out there. If it to win defensive rookie of the year as a cornerback, it's funny because as an edge rusher, you're going to hear their names a lot. They are piling up on sacks, and kind of like in the preseason, if you're a good cornerback as a rookie, we don't hear anything about you because you just don't get the ball thrown your way. And that was his case at Cincinnati. It was his case in the preseason. He has a rookie season like that where you're not hearing much about him. I think the odds were plus 1,400, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,400.
Yeah, let's go throw $10 on that. Once we wrap up recording, I'm gonna sprinkle a little on there, and I think anyone listening should do the same.
Little type light sprinkle on there. Sauce defensive rookie of the year. No, I like those. Calling your shots there. Do I have any shots I want to call?
I don't know. I mean, you just call if you're with me on Elijah Moore. That's fire.
I'm with you on Elijah. I'm with you on Sauce. I just thought of what's my edge rusher crush? I can't remember his name right now. Jacob Martin lead the team.
Jacob Martin. Yeah, that'd be sick.
All right, Teddy. I think that wraps up our season predictions. Anything else you want to say about the Jets? So I've got a 6-11 here. And you're gonna go 8-9 on that one, correct?
Yeah. I'm gonna go 8-9. And I am ready to get into our first game preview of the year.
Game preview, game 1 of the NFL season for the New York Jets. How exciting.
Ravens at Jets. Sorry, I stole it from you there.
Keep going.
I'm amped we have a home game. First home game in 3 years to open the season. The boys deserve it on 9/11. Shout out. I don't know, dude. I don't know where you want to start. Jets are 7-point underdogs. You taking them? I'm taking them.
7-point underdogs. I'm not going to be taking them. The over under is set at 44.5. Let's give our picks at the end of it. Let's preview the game.
I'm amped up.
Our game. Let's preview the game. Teddy, I wanted to hit you with a little bit of history here. This is a first ever that'll be happening in this NFL game on Sunday. Something that's never happened in the NFL before. It is the first time in NFL history that a team will put out on the football field a quarterback and left tackle that are both above or 37 years or older. So it'll be the oldest tackle quarterback tandem to ever play in a football game.
That is hilarious that it's the Jets crazy? That get that first. That's cool.
Never happened.
Yeah, it's going to be a Flacco revenge game. I mean, that's dope.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's the fun storylines. Flacco, of course, going up against his former team, of which he won one of the most improbable Super Bowl runs of this century, where he just was lights out as soon as the postseason clicked on. I think it was 11 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns, 0 picks. Yeah, crazy. Kind of breaking down what Baltimore is about, I guess, to kind of analyze the opponent before we talk about the game itself. Baltimore obviously having one of the most electric players in all of football, and Lamar Jackson there at quarterback. Huge dynamic threat. They love to, on both sides of the football, just ground and pound. They are one of the more consistent and deep teams in both trenches along the offensive line, in the front seven defensively. They love to run the ball, and they love to feature a lot of backs. J.K. Dobbins was limited in practice on Wednesday. Seems like he's going to be there, but they've also got other guys in Mike Davis. They recently signed Kenyon Drake as well, too. So they're going to have a lot of guys back there running the football. Just real quick as well with their injury report, since I mentioned Dobbins, not a ton of did not practice. Ronnie Stanley, their tackle, was limited with an ankle injury. Marcus Peters, kind of an older cornerback, limited with a knee. And then actually, sorry, there was do not practice. It was their second round pick, defensive tackle Travis Jones, rookie out of Connecticut, guy that I was hoping the Jets would take in the second round there. So breakdown of their team, to me, like I said beforehand, one of the more consistent franchises of this past decade. Now, it hasn't necessarily correlated to a Super Bowl since that Flacco season, but every year, outside of this past season where they were the most injured team in football, just the model of consistency. They will shove it down your throat in the run game. They're not too prolific in the pass. They've got one of the best tight ends, and Lamar Jackson's connection with Mark Andrews is really the top receiving thing there. Defensively, I think they're fantastic. They impress me every year because, kind of like the Patriots, they'll find guys in the secondary that kind of over exceed expectations. Hit on two really solid rookie picks and Tyler Linderbaum at center. And as we were talking about earlier, Kyle Hamilton at safety. Anything I'm forgetting about the Ravens themselves here? Obviously, the best kicker in the game, Justin Tucker, too, and Harbaugh's a hell of a head coach.
Yeah, only thing I want to add, just about, I guess, this game in particular with J.K. Dobbins and the running back room. He's been coming back from injury, whatever he did last year. I don't know if you remember. It was
ACL or Achilles. It was ACL or Achilles. I think it was ACL.
So, that's just something I've been keeping tabs on it. I don't think it's been officially announced whether he's going to play or not. It's seeming to be trending in that direction, but he has been, working back all offseason. He hasn't been back yet. So it is something to just think about. Yeah. I thought, but yeah, so he might not even be out there, I think. And, Gus Edwards is on the PUP. So that could be something to watch. Maybe they don't have their best running backs out there.
Well, their best running back is going to be out there, and his name is Lamar Jackson. So there's also that too.
That's a solid point.
Yeah.
No, but in terms of the Ravens, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. They're a really good team, really just consistent, well coached, well put together team.
Teddy, one question that I wanted to pose to you. Where, if anywhere, on the Jets roster, as we take a look at both teams, I'm going to pull up the Ravens depth chart just to get a little bit more in detail with it. Is there anywhere where you look at these teams heading into this week and you say the Jets have an advantage at these positions?
I mean, I think running back, kind of like what we just talked about, with Dobbins being kind of questionable. And even if he is out there, you don't know how explosive he'll be, if he'll be at 100%. I think the Jets probably have better running backs overall, but you then put into the fact they have Lamar Jackson who can run the ball, so that kind of is moot. I think the Jets wide receiver room's almost definitely better. I mean, they obviously have Mark Andrews at tight end, kind of leading their pass catchers, and then they have second year Rashad Bateman, who's looks to be a pretty good player, but still's kind of got to put it all together out there. But overall, I definitely think the Jets pass catchers go up to bat with the Ravens for sure, even including the tight ends and the running backs as a whole.
Totally agree. You look at their three starting wide receivers. It's Bateman, Devin Duvernay, another second-year player, I believe, and then James Proche too. And they don't really have, they've got Demarcus Robinson on their bench, but they are the interesting thing, and obviously the big move that they made this offseason, I guess their biggest loss was trading away Hollywood Brown. And he was a guy that it's so hard to find wide receiver fits into this offense because they are so run heavy, and they don't really air it out a whole ton, where Hollywood Brown was like, I just need to run
go
straight
routes.
I just need to run go routes, and you're going to chuck it up to me. And it never really fit the offense. So it will be interesting to see how this new grouping fits into what they're trying to do offensively. But at the same time, it's weird because for such a physical team that they want to be, they're very slim at wide receiver. So I don't necessarily love their receiving room at all. And so I would say that the Jets have an advantage as far as receivers go when they're going to throw out Corey Davis and Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. Kind of comparing these well too. You've got some fun notes on here too, Ted. Don't let me just steal all the shine if you want to talk about some of these as well too.
I'm sorry, where are we at?
Just kind of talking through these teams here.
I mean, we'll just talk about the games a little bit, I guess. I mean, my thing.
So it's a triple revenge game, Teddy.
That's what I want to talk about. So the Ravens have Morgan Moses as their, left tackle or whatever. Former
starting right tackle.
Right tackle.
Will be there.
Former Jets right tackle from last year. CJ Mosley, don't forget, used to be a Raven. Could be a big game for CJ Mosley. He's a captain. He's a leader on this team. I'm excited for that for sure. And then, of course, we got Joe Flacco starting at quarterback. I love that it just happens to be Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco starts in the game where we're playing against his old team. That's just like best case scenario for me. And honestly, I guess I do want to get into Flacco a little bit and just how we feel. We talked about a little kind of replacing him with Zach. What does that change? As much as I don't want to say this, I do, especially because it's like week 1. I do in some ways feel more confident in the Jets coming out and looking good and getting a win with Joe Flacco than I would have with Zach Wilson. Is that a blasphemous thing for me to say?
I think the wording is, I get what you're saying, and maybe I'll translate it to my thoughts on it. I trust Joe to not fuck it up as much as I would trust Zach to. I would think that after all of these years here of Flacco has always been one of the more level-headed quarterbacks in the game. And while I think that there are things that Zach could do to hurt the defense a little bit more in terms of deep pass concepts and mobility outside of the pocket, we've seen Zach Wilson get frazzled and make some really boneheaded plays. And now Flacco can make boneheaded plays, but I just trust him to understand the situation, understand, he's at this point in his career, he knows what his career is. He is a backup quarterback. And when he gets the opportunity to, he just has to keep his team within the game. Zach, on the other hand, is trying to ascend to what many project and want him to be as a franchise quarterback. So there's a lot of expectations of what you want to do on the field. I think, unless we're arguing different points, I agree. I would think that Flacco is less likely to fuck this up than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, and you're clarifying that well for me, because obviously the upside with Zach Wilson is greater than the upside with Joe Flacco. I guess where this comes from is when I imagine Zach Wilson's healthy, what I imagine is best case scenario is Zach Wilson is out there, and at the beginning of the year, he's like running the offense, not doing things he's not supposed to do, and then those kind of flashy plays develop as they come. I think that Joe Flacco over the next 3 games hopefully should be able to play as well. Like the way Joe Flacco plays over the next 3 games, I think that if Zach Wilson came out and did that, if he was starting, we would be like, okay, this is an okay start. I think we would have been fine with it. You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm kind of, I don't think Flacco, it's not like we're strutting out Mike White in his first start, or it's not like I'm trying to remember the other guys that we've started, the random quarterbacks. Who's the guy, Luke Falk, that we started against the Patriots a few years ago?
James Morgan.
I don't know if he ever started.
You don't remember James? Did he never get a start? I knew he was on the team at one point. That's before my days. That's
yeah. But I'm fine with Flacco. I think the way that the Jets want to run their offense with heavy run games, with kind of passing plays where the defense is going to dictate what you're going to do, Joe Flacco is going to know exactly how to execute that. He showed that last year when he first came in. I mean, when he played last year, it's not like he was winning the games he was starting, but he was decently prolific, throwing a couple touchdowns. I think he had a 3-touchdown game. So, I don't think our chances of winning this game are extremely hurt with replacing Flacco or replacing Zach Wilson with Flacco.
To me, it depends on what happens on the other side of the field. And if the Jets defense can keep the Ravens from putting up points, and when we get into predictions, I just want to go through a few things with the Ravens offense to start off, football seasons the last 5 or 6 years. If this is a low scoring defense is keeping Lamar out of the end zone, it's Justin Tucker long field goals. If the defense is able to do that, I agree. Where it would worry me is if the Ravens take a pretty early lead, and then it's Flacco needs to open up that deep passing game, and they can't run the football. To me, the Jets getting through this month stretch or this 3-week stretch without Zach Wilson isn't about Joe Flacco. It's about, can this defense just do its part, where Flacco just needs to run the football, make smart plays, and win low-scoring games.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad point, and I think that it really is going to come down to the defense. And when I look at this game, I've talked about, I'm not super confident in the Ravens receivers, not super confident in their running backs. I think that what it comes down to is, how is our defensive line going to look, and how are they going to be at, number one, just defending the normal run plays that they run, whether that's quarterback or running back, because the Ravens have been consistently one of the best running teams in the league. But also just on passing plays, like, can we contain the edge? Can we make it so that Lamar Jackson isn't getting outside the pocket and running and having as much time to either, take it and run it, or just kind of sit back there, roll out, and make a great play. And I think that's what this game's going to come down to. I think one of the biggest problems we've had when you have a terrible defense is just, you're not getting the time of possession. I think kind of going with what you're saying, I don't necessarily think it needs to be a super low scoring game, but that's kind of the idea, where we need to be in control. We need to be the team that we have the ball, we're holding it, and then when we're on defense, we're able to get off the field, as opposed to go out whatever our offense does, and then, we're not going to be back out there for 8 or 9 minutes because our defense can't get off the field. So I think what this game's really going to come down to, if the Jets are going to have a chance, is, how does this D-line look against their O-line? How does this D-line look containing Lamar Jackson?
And to bring that up, to talk about the Ravens offensive line, it's a good offensive line, but it does have its weak spots. Like you just mentioned, Morgan Moses, like you mentioned a few minutes ago, Morgan Moses is their starting right tackle. Now he's got a good guard next to him in Kevin Zeitler. But you know what? Left guard Ben Powers is all right, and they do have a rookie at center. So it's not like they are this statue of an offensive line. They've always been pretty consistent at the line, and they seem to get the best out of their guys. But we saw Morgan Moses last year, and I tend to think that maybe you can catch them a little off guard, because there are some new pieces being thrown in here, much like the Jets, where if the Jets front seven, and specifically their front four, is as good as we think it's going to be, and they can just keep throwing guys out there, that could be a huge difference maker that can help keep the Jets in this game heading into the fourth quarter.
Definitely. So I want to hear these stats about the Ravens. That's what I want you to get into right now.
And it was funny because I typed up all of this stuff, and I looked. There's nothing more frustrating than when I spend time doing research on something, and then I see somebody put it out on Twitter like 5 hours later, and it's like, well, now Blake is just stealing that stuff from this guy. But I legit was typing all this out at 6 a.m. And then Mike sent the same thing. Mike, who was on the podcast last week, sent it into the group chat. In the Lamar Jackson era, since he's been a starting quarterback, and it's really just a 3-year sample, they've averaged 41 points per game in their season openers. They come out blazing. There was a 59-10 win over the Dolphins. They lost last year in overtime to the Raiders, but put up 27. And then there was another season in which they were in the 30s or 40s as well, too. You go even a year before that, when it was Joe Flacco to start the season, and Lamar was the backup. I think they also put up 47 points. They've won 5 of their last 6 season openers. And really, they're just one of those teams. And we talk about consistency. They've been so great in the preseason, and that's what gets a lot of talk. Coming out in the regular season, they are guns a-blazing. And to me, I keep saying this about the Ravens specifically. I think they're one of the more slept on teams in the AFC. Everybody's talking the AFC West. Everybody's talking the Bills, the Bengals, and can they, keep the momentum from winning the Super Bowl last year, or from making it to the Super Bowl last year. The Baltimore Ravens were one of the best teams in football, despite having one of the better teams in football. They weren't one of the best, but they were one of the better teams in football, despite having the worst injury luck. And it seems to be that their team is going to be pretty healthy in here. So I think they're going to be pretty pissed off. And I'm expecting a statement game out of them, and really to set the tone this year. So it's going to be a tough battle for the Jets, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to speak on that, kind of their successful week ones, and their ability to kind of put everything together right off the bat, it just speaks to their coaching. Jim Harbaugh. Am I getting these confused? John, right?
John, yeah.
John Harbaugh. Yeah. I mean, the Ravens have been, them and the Steelers, and they're kind of those teams that, obviously they did have pretty consistent quarterbacks, but at the same time, over a long, long stretch of time, they have just continued to be a good team at the top of the league, and I think that's what you worry about, especially week one, a team like the Jets, who's so young, so inexperienced, doesn't have their starting quarterback, second year head coach, second year offensive coordinator, all these first and second years starting. It does worry you when you go against a team like the Ravens, who is going to come out prepared. And I kind of agree with you. I think is being overall underrated as a team this season. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tall task for these Jets this week. It is.
Yeah. And I can just go in. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we go into score predictions? I don't know if you have a score prediction or whatnot, or plays in the game.
I guess my big focus is this game is really, for me, it's going to come down to how well our defense can kind of step up. And I think that there's a lot of pressure on Jeff Ulbrich for this game and just kind of the beginning of this season, because we've talked about how difficult the season is and the fact that he's kind of the guy on the chopping block right now. And it's going to come down to, hey, does this defense take a step forward, or is it kind of what we saw in the preseason with the starters where teams are just moving down the field, doing whatever they want? We're not getting to the quarterback. They score a touchdown, that's going to be really bad. And that's kind of, in my opinion, that's the recipe for the Jets to really not take a step forward and kind of be stuck in the same place they've been, is if they're not able to improve that defense, at least get it somewhere in the middle of the pack, because you have to be able to have your offense on the field and you have to be able to get them back on the field if they, aren't putting everything together when they are out there. So I think this game's going to come down to how well can the defense hold together the Ravens, and I think there's a lot of pressure on Jeff Ulbrich in this game and these beginning games. I want you to give your prediction first.
Yeah. It's not the matchup it's not the team that you want to start off the season against. It's just to echo your points. A team that is very new and has also had to go through a lot of new changes in the last few weeks regarding the tackle position, regarding the quarterback position, throwing in Quan Alexander at the last second. Like, there are still so many new moving pieces outside of all the rookies that are added and the free agent signings. And the Ravens are a very respected franchise that start off the season hot. I unfortunately don't see it being too close of a game. I would love to be. This is what I'm going to say for this Jets season, because it is that weird thing between us where, like, you are the fan, you're smart when it comes to football. So I'm not trying to say like you are biased in your opinion. I'm also coming from the side where, like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a hater every week on this show.
Right. But you don't have, it's just realistic, and the Jets need to prove it. And you don't have the inherent, just like as I want to be smart, I want to be realistic, but I'm going to give the Jets the benefit of the doubt because I want them to be good and I want them to win this week, or at least cover,
And I want them to be good too, because it makes it more fun to talk about. But this week I am going to go with a pretty lopsided victory. Ravens 35, Jets 17. And I will say I love the over in this game. I do. Yeah. I love it. Hit the over, just because I think Baltimore could get the over by themselves if they wanted. I think that, I keep echoing this team is much improved, and I think it will show a lot more so in week 7 through the end of the season than it will weeks 1 through 7. There'll be games that are close. Cleveland will be close. Cincinnati and Pittsburgh could be close. Miami will be close. This one, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be that close.
Blake, let me tell you about what's going to go down.
Hype us up. Get the blood flowing.
The Ravens are a great team, but guess what? They got a lot of question marks. The Jets have an improved defense. They're going to be able to handle them enough. Jets offense is going to be clicking. Joe Flacco is going to throw for 3 touchdowns. Breece Hall is going to run for 1, over 100 yards on the ground. The Jets are going to win the game 31-24. The over is going to smash. The Jets are going to cover and hit their money line, and we're going to shock the world. That's what I think is going to happen this Sunday at 1:00.
Wow. So we view that totally different, because like even if you were to say, like, if you were to ask me what's the scenario in which the Jets win, I would say it's like a
You'd say it's like 22. Yeah.
16-10 victory, you know, like a 17-13 win. But you got the
Yeah.
Jets going out there and lighting it up on offense. I like it.
I am just really confident in the offense, to be honest with you. And part of me wants to say that's like unwarranted, but I just think like just look at the games that that Zach Wilson didn't play last year. And obviously, like, this isn't the best case for Zach Wilson, but he was a rookie. And then you had Joe Flacco and Mike White and Josh Johnson all be able to step in to this offense that's ran by Mike LaFleur and flourish. All three of those guys had games with 3+ touchdowns last year, so again, going back to the defense, like, the ability for the Jets offense to just be on the field is going to be huge. And I think, number one, they're going to have an improved run game. Joe Flacco is going to be out there. Mike LaFleur is going to be a little more polished in the booth. He's not going to have a slow start like he did last year. He kind of has his feet under him when it comes to play calling. So I think they're going to be able to kind of get things done offensively. And I'm just hoping that this improved defense can really contain Lamar Jackson to some extent. And again, it's one of those things. Do I think the Ravens have a better team than the Jets? Yes. Do I think there's a path that the Jets, come out and shock the world? Yes. That's where I'm going.
I'm gonna put some like emotional music behind your kind of
Yeah.
hyping everything up for the season. Get everybody fucking amped up after I took a shit on their chest.
No, for sure. But I guess my main point is I really am pretty confident in the offense. Like, I feel maybe I shouldn't be, but especially with Mike LaFleur, and like, he's this up and coming coach who's already, the whispers of maybe he's going to be a head coach candidate are coming in, especially once you got out of the first 5-6 games last year. He really elevated it. I mean, it really was when he went back in the booth and kind of could get a feel for the whole game. But he had a great season last year when it came to play calling. The Jets had their struggles, and obviously, especially with the rookies and the backup quarterbacks, there were some bad games, but they were able to at some points be pretty prolific last year and, get it done offensively. So I'm taking them, but the real storyline is the over is going to hit in this game regardless. It's either going to be the Jets shock the world and score more, or they're going to give up 35, 38 points, and then they don't need a whole lot to get over. So take the over if you're listening.
Yeah, it's at 44.5 right now. And Teddy, something I was thinking about doing, we won't be able to do it for the podcast, but I'd love to be able to, on a Sunday morning, just put out a graphic of just three bets for the game that we like. We'll take a look at the player props, and we'll each put out on the Twitter feed
for the Jets game.
Yeah, for the Jets game, just for the Jets
I love
game.
That.
Just some plays that we like, because I just checked my books right now, and there's nothing player prop wise, and it's probably just because injuries, quarterback situation, all that stuff. But I think that'll be fun to do. So make sure to check out our Twitter Sunday morning, because we'll try and put some of that stuff out as well too.
Yeah, and
I agree.
Let me give a little sprinkle here, just to preview that. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm assuming the Jets team total is at like 17 and a half.
I'll pull it up right now for you.
I'm going to take that. I think they're going to be able to score 3 touchdowns, and get to 21 at least.
Yeah, I've got them at 17 on my score prediction. Let me see what they're at. I can pull this up right now.
I think it's 16 and a half, but I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting, man. I'm just really intrigued to see this offense. I mean, I feel like that is what everyone's so excited for, but I want to see how these receivers. I do think Corey Davis is going to be the guy who comes out as wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. I think Garrett Wilson's going to be in the 3 role. But at that same time, he's going to get worked in there. And I'm excited to see who's playing predominantly in the slot. Is it Garrett Wilson? Is it Elijah Moore? Is it Corey Davis? Surprisingly, do they just throw Braxton Berrios out there? There's so many questions I've just been thinking about, and this is where it gets real. So I'm real excited for this weekend, man.
They're trying to fuck with you here. They're putting it at 17 and a half. So they really want you to get over that 17 hump.
Yeah.
There.
No, it's tough, but I'm going to take that for sure. That'll be one of my bets if you check us out Sunday morning. Here's
one of mine. I'll see your total, and I'll give you a first half over 13 and a half points for the Ravens. I'll give you that one.
Doesn't seem bad.
We're arguing different games here, right? It's not that bad. 2 touchdowns. Fuck.
I have a feeling that this podcast is going to turn into me predicting the Jets to win every week, and then
they're going to win the Super Bowl.
But it could be a little fun tradition if the Jets have a bad year.
We'll put a blooper reel of like your predictions, and then we're recapping the final score the next week. And then
we got to get that prediction on Twitter for sure. For sure.
Oh, that'll be great. Okay, perfect. Teddy, anything else that you want to say for this week? We have officially made it as football season.
I'm good.
The next time we speak, we'll have seen 60 minutes of Jets football. Thank you guys so much for listening, as always, to Chasing 1969, a New York Jets podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_Chasing69. Same for the YouTube channel, Teddy at Teddy Huncho. I'm at Blake Andrew Pace, and check out some of my other work at Sports Illustrated for the Jets as well, too. Congratulations to you all. We've made it to the best time of the year. We look forward to spending the next 4 or 5 months just talking Jets football with you.
Till the Super Bowl.
Till the Jets win the Super Bowl. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.